Hey guys, welcome to Fast Keto. I'm your host, Ketogenic Girl. Hey guys, welcome to this week's episode of Fast Keto, and this is episode 1 of 2 that are going to air this week. I'm dropping this bonus episode as a special feature because I was recently interviewed by Brian Williamson of Ketovangelist, and we had such a great discussion about keto, a little bit about my story going from chronic dieting, chronic cardio, and finding my way to what I have found to be such a freeing and nourishing keto lifestyle with whole foods. It was so great to talk to him. He used to be a vegetarian as well as I was for many years. And so we get to talk about a lot of really relevant topics to keto, and we had a lot of fun chatting. So I thought you guys would enjoy this episode. And I'm going to be doing my regularly scheduled podcast, which is also going to be coming out this week. It's with a very special guest. We're going to be talking about some really surprising findings about protein as compared to a standard American diet and having protein on a low-carb diet, and it is fascinating stuff. So I am really excited to bring you guys that episode. So enjoy today's episode. It's with Brian Williamson, the host of Ketovangelist, and this episode is brought to you by Ketogenic Girl. If you haven't checked out my cookbook yet, it's called Keto Essentials on Amazon. It has 150 of my most favorite delicious, nourishing keto recipes, as well as a ton of information on how to get into ketosis, testing yourself or not testing yourself, how to interpret results, how to maintain a ketogenic lifestyle, and most of all, how to avoid all of the mistakes that I made when I first went keto and that I've learned with working with over 3,000 people so far to get into nutritional ketosis. So check out Keto Essentials on Amazon, and I hope you guys enjoy this episode. A few disclaimers. By listening to this podcast, you agree not to use this podcast as medical advice, as I am not a qualified healthcare provider. The information presented on this podcast is for educational purposes only. Ketogenic Girl is not qualified to provide medical advice. Consult your own physician for any medical issues that you may be having. This entire disclaimer also applies to any guests or contributors to this podcast. Prior to beginning a ketogenic diet, you should undergo a full health screening with your physician to confirm that a keto diet is suitable for you and to rule out any conditions or contraindications that may pose risks or that are incompatible with the ketogenic diet. A keto diet may or may not be appropriate for you if you have any kind of health condition, whether known to you or unknown, so you must consult your physician to find this out. Anyone under the age of 18 should consult with their physician and their parents or legal guardian.
KetoCon is the world's first and only conference dedicated to the science and the stories of the ketogenic diet and lifestyle. This year, KetoCon will be held in Austin, Texas from June 15th through the 17th. We'll have speakers from around the world sharing their research and life experiences about the benefits of keto. And we want you to come be a part of it too. Last year was amazing, and this year is going to be even better. You'll have the chance to meet and mingle with keto folks from all walks of life. You'll find great new keto products, and you're going to make lots of new keto friends who understand how the keto lifestyle can empower you to take control of your health and show the world just how awesome you really are, because you're awesome. So how can you be a part of this incredible experience? That's easy. Just go to ketocon.org/shop and get your tickets for the keto event of the year. That's ketocon.org/shop to buy your tickets now. Oh, and when you get there, come find me. I'd love to say hi. And hello again, everybody. This is the Ketovangelist podcast. I'm your ruggedly handsome host. My name happens to be Brian Williamson. Now, as you heard in the intro, I've continued my streak of butchering people's last names. Vanessa, how do you pronounce your last name? Is it Spina or Spina?
It is Spina.
Spina. Okay. So I get super nervous about it, even though I know it ahead of time. And I've even talked to my guests like before we start recording and asked, hey, is this how you pronounce it? And they say yes. And then I totally screwed up. So that's like my thing. So I hope you're not too offended by my incompetence.
No, Brienne, I'm definitely
That's great.
not.
That's great. Good.
Offended.
Vengeance is mine, saith Vanessa. That's really good.
Revenge.
Yes.
Revenge.
Okay. So,
Yes.
Where are you? Where are you coming to us from?
I'm actually in Prague right now.
Prague. Okay.
Yeah,
So
the some people think of it as Eastern Europe, but it's really Central Europe in the Czech Republic.
Czech Republic, yeah. So now, are you from Prague, or you just happen to be living there right now?
Yeah, I'm just living here. So a couple of years ago, I was living in Vancouver, BC. I'm originally Canadian, but I grew up overseas, mostly in China, which is super weird and unusual. But I ended up living in Vancouver for the last 10 years. And my husband, who's from Colorado, and we'd visit Prague every year. We love coming here, and we both have online-based businesses. We were both working in finance at the time. He still is. I no longer am. And we visited Prague every year. We had a finance conference nearby, and we would come here and stay here for a month at a time. And every time we were leaving, we look at each other on the way to the airport and be like, it's not enough. I want more. So we just decided to sell everything at home and just move here with a couple suitcases and our laptops a couple years ago. I think it's about 2.5 years ago now, but we travel so much. We more have kind of a digital nomadic lifestyle, but this is really the base where you could say the most of our stuff is.
Right. That's the majority of the surface area of the materials that you own reside in that.
Right, exactly.
So now I'm curious, you said you grew up mostly in China, but you were born in BC, or your family's from there?
My family's Canadian. They live between Quebec, Halifax, and my parents live in Ottawa. So that's where I was officially born, was in the hospital there. My parents were living in Cameroon in Africa. Right before they were going to have me, they made a last minute change and flew back to Ottawa to have me there. But I would be Canadian anyway, just by nature of the fact that they both are.
Right. Right. So now, are they were they just travelers because they liked to travel, or was it because of job, or is it something that's super secret and you can't talk about?
It's super secret. No, they are big adventurers, and they both work for the Canadian government in development work. And then later on, my father took on more of the trade side of things.
Okay.
So they work for the Canadian government as overseas, agents for the Canadian government there. And we lived kind of from embassy to embassy, mostly in China, in Beijing. And we came back and forth between Canada. And then also I did my last year of high school in the Philippines before moving to Vancouver to go to UBC.
So is this a situation where just genetically we're predisposed to enjoying the nomadic thing, or because you grew up in it? This is the classic psychological question, right? Is it environment, or is it genetics? What's the determinant here? Where would you put the emphasis on that?
Yeah, I think we really become used to, certain lifestyles when we grow up. My parents are definitely very adventurous. They moved to China at a time where, foreigners weren't really super welcome there. Mm-hmm. And it was kind of scary to be moving there, in the 90s and also living there, even in the late 80s as foreigners. So they're really adventurous people. So it's probably in my, blood as well. But I think just moving around so much, we move to a new place every 3 years, or we also move to new, different homes during that time. And I like to just keep things on the move. I think I'm more stimulated by life, and I'm a maximizer type personality, optimizer, which also kind of lines up with keto. So I like to make the most of, my existence here. And for me, that involves trying to see as much and experience as much of the world as possible.
Now, you said you were in the financial industry, in the financial world. How did you then find yourself as someone in the keto space if you started off your career, as it were, in finance or in the business world?
Yeah, Brian, it's really cool. I always loved finance. I always loved business. And to me, working in finance and working in the markets, especially, I had my stockbroker's license. So I was working right out of university, went right into finance in Vancouver and working with publicly listed companies, specifically in resources and gold, silver, and mining. It was right when that industry was booming.
Right.
And it was pulling in a lot of people from, who were graduating. And I also found that it would be the fastest way to learn about finance was just studying, companies, studying balance sheets and learning about business so that I could eventually have my own business. So I wanted to kind of go into this quick school where I would learn as much as possible, as fast as possible. And I ended up doing that for several years. And towards the end, I was doing a web series which you can still catch some videos online on YouTube if you look up Cambridge House Live. And I was doing videos interviewing financial experts, and I absolutely loved it. It was so much fun. I was a lot of work,
right?
Preparing the interviews and doing all that. And it's very different from podcasting because you're on camera. There's a lot more that goes into it. And, I find podcasting is so much easier to focus because there isn't always a video component. So I was doing that and I just loved it so much. I loved interviewing people, but it turns out there's one thing that I love more, and it was keto and nutrition. And I had studied nutrition as my electives. We get to take those things that we like to do in university. And so nutrition was my elective. When I wasn't working, I was reading about health and nutrition topics. And that's usually what I did in my personal time. So when I started getting into keto, and intermittent fasting is kind of what I got to like around the same time. And the combination of the two, I was getting up every day before work around 4 a.m. just so that I could go on Instagram and search the hashtag for keto and check out other people's posts and then post my own stuff. And I was just posting like little things here and there, like little recipes and things. And it turns out that a lot of people were really struggling to actually understand keto, get into ketosis. And I was able to provide, I guess, my experience and share that with people. And so it just started taking up more and more of my time, and eventually got to the point where I could no longer do what I was doing before. And the timing worked out really well because we moved to Prague around the same time. So I was able to just transition really easily over from what I was doing then and into this.
So, okay. You said that when given your free time, you were interested in nutrition. So where did you go to school? I'm assuming it was in Canada.
Yes. I went to the University of British Columbia, and I was studying mostly economics, finance, and political science. And then I took nutrition as my fun subjects, my electives.
Right. Now, so from a young age, would you say that like nutrition has been something that you're interested in, or was it something that you just sort of, as you got older, you're like, health is kind of important. I should look into that.
Well, what I now realize is that health is my greatest passion in life, and democratizing health is my greatest passion, especially disease prevention. And a lot of that comes from my own family history. My grandfather died of type 2 diabetes, and we have a lot of metabolically based issues in the family. I guess because of that, it's always motivated me in a way, always had in the back of my head, I want to make sure, I don't get diabetes because, my grandfather died of it, and just thinking about it. And I have epilepsy in the family as well, which is, is related. So part of it came from that. And then as I talk about in my book, one of my two favorite things was just, studying how to burn fat and also how to eat as much as possible because I love eating. So a lot of it came back to that,
right.
And understanding nutrition, that was probably the driving goal. But then over the years, my passion really started growing more and more for disease prevention. There's nothing more wasteful to me or more of a tragedy than someone close to you or someone in your life who dies from something that is actually preventable from nutrition, a disease that is preventable through nutrition or is reversible through nutrition and changes in nutrition.
Okay. Yeah. And I totally agree. And, the power of the food that you eat, I think the more people are explaining that, like you're doing on your podcast and through the books that you've written, the more helpful it is to make it more normalized. Because there is a certain like, hey, this is kind of weird thing, right? When it comes to stuff like keto, because it is so counter to what's considered the orthodox in terms of nutrition. But that kind of leads to my next question. Being interested in nutrition is one thing, but going completely off the rails and going to the keto side of things is a different thing. So how do you get from nutrition and health is an interest to me to I'm going to try this crazy thing where it goes completely against everything that I've been told my entire life?
Yeah, what I love about that is, how we refer to it as this crazy thing when it actually is the most sane thing, in the world, in my opinion now, in terms of eating. You're just eating real food. Like, is there anything more sane than that? And yet we refer to it as crazy and insane because it's just counter to everything that we've been told is healthy. And that is one of the things that I noticed, when I started getting into keto. I was like, well, I've done all these different things. I've tried every single thing out there. For me, a lot of it was driven by trying to reduce inflammation because I had developed a lot of chronic inflammation in my hands and ulcerative colitis. So starting to look and dig more into that. Like I said before, I found that I had tried so many different things and nothing had really worked for me. And then I thought, well, if nothing's ever worked, if, I become opposite George and I do the exact opposite of everything that I've ever done, maybe that will actually work. And it is, to me, the sanest thing I've ever done. I started coming to it because I said I had ulcerative colitis, and my cousin at the time had discovered or heard of this thing called the gluten. So my husband said, why don't you try doing this gluten test? She was in kind of the health paleo circles. She listened to a lot of like Chris Kresser and a lot of people in our community. And that's how she had found out about it. So I did the test and my test results were off the charts. So my husband said, why don't you just try, going off of it? So I thought, well, I'd already given up sugar for the reasons of reducing inflammation. So I'd started going off gluten. And to me, that's in a nutshell kind of what keto is really no sugar, no gluten, combining that. There's other aspects to it, but that's really like what it is at its basis for me, is removing all those inflammatory factors, just eating real foods. And so when I went off gluten, I'd already been off sugar. All of my pain went away in my hands, and the inflammation that I had through digestive pain also went away. So I was like, there's got to be more to this. This is amazing what it's done to remove my pain, but what if it could also optimize my health? And that's when I started reading more and digging more, and I found intermittent fasting. The first resource that I found on it was Ori Hoffelmaker. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the warrior diet.
Yeah.
And he talks about doing one meal a day, but his approach to it is not really like low carb, high fat or keto or anything. Right. I think he does like emphasize being vegetarian if you can. And I was also vegetarian for about 17 years at the time. So keto was literally the opposite of everything that I was doing until then.
So first of all, I just want to say props to you for using the opposite George Seinfeld reference. I appreciate a good Seinfeld reference, but also I want to know, because I was a vegan for a while. I remember vividly my first non-vegan meal after being a vegan for a couple of years. So what was the first non-vegetarian meal that you had when you decided, all right, I'm going to try something else? Do you remember?
Yeah, it's kind of a funny story. I mean, if you haven't eaten meat in 17 years and then you don't forget that meal.
Right. That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
My best friend and her husband will love this, but they grill a lot. And Pete and I were over at their house quite a bit, and they were always like grilling meats and stuff. And I would make like my little vegetarian meal. My best friend, Jessica, she grew up on a farm and her father was a farmer. And so she really had like an intimate connection with like animals, and the connection between actually killing an animal and eating it, as opposed to, I think what a lot of us don't have that connection because we just go to the store and we buy things in like pretty packages, and so lose that connection. So she really had that connection. I'd ask her questions like, how is it like having your pet pig or whatever and then killing it? Or, what is it like, eating chicken when you've been like around them so much? And she's like, it's really, she made me feel like more of the connection to it. And so I was at their house one day and they were grilling a bunch of like steak and sausages. This is probably part of a big plan I was not aware of that were going to entice me with all these meats and just act like it was a coincidence. But we were moving to Prague that summer, like I think within a month or something. And I knew from being in Europe before when my parents were living over here that it's a lot easier to eat meat over here. So something I was kind of debating in my head. And then Cody had grilled up a bunch of steak, and I was like, grill me up one. So he like literally fired up the grill, made a steak. I had a piece of it, and my husband has a recording of me eating it where I go into this like ecstatic state, and he posted it on his Instagram, and someone thought that he had proposed to me because like I was so overwhelmed with emotion.
Right.
Piece of steak. So Cody then proceeded to go in the kitchen, get out all the bacon that they had and fry it up because like he just, I had to taste everything.
You can't waste that moment. You cannot waste that moment. You gotta take it full advantage of it. Yeah, for sure.
Exactly. Just total gluttony, but I had to taste bacon and all this stuff. So to this day, he credits, Ketogenic Girl completely with that night and getting me to start eating steak and meat again. We both know you can do keto vegetarian, but I mean, it's not the same. And I have to say, like, it really propelled me on my journey with keto because I was really malnourished as a vegetarian.
Right.
And a lot of people do vegetarian and vegan well. I didn't. I wasn't eating nutritional yeast every day and doing all the things that you should be doing. And my health got so good so fast on keto that it really propelled a lot of, the fire going forward with it.
Yeah. So just to kind of piggyback on that, every time I eat steak now, it's like that for me. So, I totally get it.
It looks like someone just proposed to
right.
you.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, exactly. And I said yes. So it's happy all the way around. So, and it's funny that you mentioned being sort of a malnourished vegetarian or vegan. The more I read about it, the more I'm convinced that it's prevalent in that community. I'm not saying anything overtly negative about, vegetarians or vegans, but as a dietary lifestyle, I think that it may be masking some underlying potentially deleterious or problematic metabolic consequences in the guise of healthy eating. And that's a shame, really, because like I've talked to doctors and they'll tell me that if you look at coronary calcium scores for vegetarians and vegans, they're almost always higher than folks who are eating less vegetables. And of course, I'm not saying that scientifically that is always the case. I'm just saying that anecdotally, this is what I'm hearing. And to me, it seems like, okay, that should be something that should be announced, right? Like, hey, maybe if we're seeing this, something should be looked at. Maybe it's wrong. Maybe these are all anomalous, whatever. But portraying it as the healthiest lifestyle, which, I think it's safe to assume that vegetarianism is talked about in that vein as it is the healthiest kind of lifestyle. Portraying it such when the consequences may not necessarily be that healthy is not a good idea, I think. Just more work should be done on evaluating the actual outcomes of it. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. I couldn't agree more. And I think I always thought that it was the healthiest, lifestyle and way of eating. I don't think it's the healthiest anymore. I do think that it's the least cruel just because, you're not directly involved in killing animals. And that was more of a motivator for me than the diet at the time. But I think if you are going to do it, you can do it really well. I've been working on some keto vegetarian meal plans just because I do really still agree with a lot of the ethical choices behind it. If you are going to do it, you have to do it so well. And I really think you have to be so well educated and informed on what it takes to meet your nutritional needs. Because when you're eating animal meat, you're going to get your essential amino acids, very likely essential fatty acids, very easily, even just from an egg or something. If you're a vegan and you don't even have eggs, or you're vegetarian and you're so limited, you really, like I was saying, nutritional yeast and those kinds of things need to be like a daily thing. And you really have to be really doing it properly. And
even then you still have to supplement vitamin B and all sorts of things. And again, not saying it's not possible. Totally is possible. I have friends who are vegetarian keto folks, good on them. It does add a level of complexity otherwise.
It does. And I always say I'm kind of waiting for when the lab meat comes, and people get super grossed out when I talk about that. Right. But I'm like, if I can eat a steak and it tastes like a ribeye and it looks like a ribeye and it has the same nutritional content, and I didn't have to, kill an animal for it, why not,
Right. So I want to encourage you to check out a book though, along those lines. It's written by a former vegan, and she is a radical environmentalist in her sort of political stance. So it's written from that point of view, and she became a meat eater because of her environmental and moral objection to animal cruelty and killing animals. So if that doesn't intrigue you enough, I would recommend you check it out, because I may not be doing it justice and you may hate it, but it's called The Vegetarian Myth. And it's an interesting book. It's really hard sometimes to realize that this is someone who is, because she is arguing from the seat of, I used to be a vegan, so I understand and I still agree with the vegan position, but I eat meat because of the vegan position. So it's really interesting.
Right.
From that point
and I think that I would love to read that. I've heard a lot about it. I've also heard about different statistics on, how it actually affects the animals.
Yes. Yeah.
I just now try to make the best choices in terms of humanely raised, treated and killed animals, so that at least, we can support local farmers, support farmers who are doing it properly, as opposed to, it's really the mass like farming and slaughterhouses and things that I think are real tragic that they exist in our culture and our food supply. So I think you just can make more of those choices and support local farmers.
And I think one thing that we're seeing, at least on a small scale now, I don't know how it is nowadays in Prague, because it could be very different there. But at least in the States, I live in Texas, I live in Austin. And what I'm seeing here is a small emergence of sort of a hearkening back to your neighborhood butcher shop kind of thing. Like this, I don't want to say artisanal, because that's kind of got a bit of a connotation to it that I'm not trying to imply, but it's more of a slow food movement, sort of small scale. We're not here for the mass production kind of thing where, you get to know, you become more connected to your food supply. You know what I mean? So because of that, you're more inclined to actually care about the food that you eat. When everything's in a box and there is no actual connection to the food supply, you become less concerned about what it's doing to your body, I think.
Yes, I love hearing that. And I love seeing that. And I love that that's a movement, and even just seeing like urban farming, people farming in their backyards, raising chickens in their backyards and that kind of thing, I think is awesome. But I love hearing that that's happening more there, because here in Prague, we have a local butcher and we know how they actually can watch them cutting the meat in front of you and doing all of that. And that's downtown in the city. That's where we get our meat from. And they don't add any nitrates or sugar or anything. They make salami right there just with like salt and the meat. And we know them and we know where they get the meat from. We know it's all very, humanely, ethically done. So I love knowing that that's not just something that's possible over here.
What's your butcher's name?
That's growing in North America. I don't know his actual name.
Oh, that's too bad.
Ones that work in there, but now I'm going to make a point of finding out.
That's what I'm saying. Like when you can walk in and go, "Hey, Ricky, I need this," like that's like you're connected to it. You know what I mean?
Lady, there's a bit of a language barrier.
Oh, that's right.
The lady that I always deal with, I don't know her name, but like she kind of has a twinkle in her eye whenever I come in because I buy so much bacon, and she just likes me that I make an attempt to speak broken Czech. But I'm going to have to find out her name now just so I can greet her formally. So, I mean,
it's to me, like, I would really like to see it swing back to where you've got a butcher and you've got like a fishmonger and you've got like these individuals that you can go and talk to tell them what you want, and they can help you out. In the healthcare field, what I'm noticing from talking to folks who are, elbow deep in it all day long is this push toward really individualized care, because the record is starting to become impossible to ignore that though we as human beings systematically function very similarly, the individual variability within an individual human is so great that it requires, sort of unique and individual care at times. So being able to like expand that out to the first order health, which is the food you eat, I think is, I'd like to see more of that. I'm digressing and I apologize. I didn't mean to take us off that, but let's get back to talking about you some more. Okay. So that's how you got into the area of keto. You were also interested in intermittent fasting. So when you started, you were interested in that. Do you still practice intermittent fasting today?
Absolutely, Brian. And that's really what my whole philosophy is based about. If you read my book, Keto Essentials, or the 28-Day Challenge, which I started a few years ago, everything is based around the concept of fasting to restore insulin sensitivity and practicing that, because that's really when things started really taking off for me, is when I combined the two. So I actually had come off of sugar for a long time. I had tried low carb before, but when everyone else did with Atkins, and I kind of missed the whole ketone thing. I was eating too much protein. I was doing all these things wrong. So I was like, I think at one point I was eating whipped cream, like right out of the canister and it has sugar in it.
Right.
I mean, like, I don't know what I was thinking. I just know that like I have this one image of doing that. And I'm like, I was doing it as a joke for entertain some friends, but I know now that like that was definitely not low carb, but that's how misinformed I was at the time. And I was, in university. So I had come off of sugar though. Like I had gone from sugar to like artificial sweeteners to natural sweeteners. That's kind of the point that I was at. I was kind of consuming stevia instead of sugar. I had tried the first intermittent fasting thing that I tried was the warrior diet. So doing one meal a day. And I always tell people, intermittent fasting comes about completely naturally on keto, because for myself personally, like I get so satisfied nutritionally from having all my needs met, that you just start to fast between meals. So like I was one of those people who always had a diet soda or a sugar-free coffee in my hand. And I was doing that. I call it like nursing, like grazing, I was doing that all day long between meals. And now I can have one of those if I want with a meal, but I would so much rather eat actual food. And then when I eat keto, I become so satiated at the meal that it's sometimes hard for me to even have like a ketogenic girl coffee because the name's copyrighted or whatever, but just coffee with coconut oil frothed up is just like too much sometimes for me. So now I just do like a lot of black coffee, and I try to just meet all my nutritional needs at meals. And for me, that usually looks like about 2 meals a day, but completely fasted outside of that at all times. So only black coffee, tea, water. And I talk about that so much in my book and in my meal plans because it's that eating to satiety and then allowing the body to have a break from secreting insulin between meals. There's several doctors out there who've really made this very prominent. Dr. Jason Fung and Megan Ramos, and there's other doctors out there who've talked a lot about the connection between insulin, but it's that natural fasting between meals is so aligned with our ancestral way of eating. Keto is as well. But to me, when we were pre-modern civilization, pre-agricultural revolution, the way that we were eating was very similar to intermittent fasting with keto.
Yeah. And the way I phrase that, because I totally agree, is that fasting is baked in to keto, right? It's part of it. Mm-hmm. Especially if you're coming from if you're brand new. And I'm sure that you've experienced this too. One of the things that people freak out about, and we get like panicked emails and panicked messages is, I'm not hungry. What's wrong? And I want to say, nothing's wrong, totally okay for you not to be hungry. But it's weird that people are so programmed that, you've got to eat, you've got to eat, you've got to eat. And I mean, yes, in the big picture, yes, you do have to eat, but you don't have to eat all the time. And not being hungry, not being hungry doesn't mean you're sick. It means your body doesn't want food right now. And that
just shows what a alien feeling it is.
Right. And that's what I talk to people all the time is we're so attuned to all the externals and we ignore the one internal factor that we need to be paying attention to. When your body says, I'm hungry, okay, eat. When your body says, I am no longer hungry, stop eating. Right. I mean, there should be no like cards or clocks or, program. Like that's all you need, just listen to what your body says. But it's so weird that we're talking about being sort of removed from our food supply. We're even removed from our own metabolic system in that regard. People talking about macros, for example, like I didn't hit my macros or I was so close. So I forced down the last bit of food. I'm like, why would you do that? Just because of a spreadsheet, why would you do that? So having to learn these things is so strange for a lot of people. And I'm sure that you experience that too with, helping people out. The books that you've written, I'm sure you get a lot of feedback on, or questions about stuff, the programs that you go through, that you host. I'm sure that you get that as well, right?
Yes. And it really is an intuitive eating that I think comes eventually with keto, but it really takes time. So like you were saying, at the beginning, we don't even know what it is to feel satiated, and it shocks us. Like right. I have people all the time tell me like, I can't eat like the third meal on the meal plan. What do I do? And they do feel like panicked about it because we have these macros and things that you're supposed to hit. But I think at the beginning, they're just so important to help you fix that so that you can do keto properly. You can be doing it the right way so that then you start getting those benefits where you are really nutritionally satisfied and you are becoming more and more in tune with, like you said, your hunger and your fullness. But it takes time to get there. So having those macro guidelines at the beginning, I know they helped me to understand what keto was. And then also they kind of forced me personally to eat fats because I did, and I still do like kind of therapeutic keto anywhere between like 65 to 80% or sometimes even 90% from healthy fats of my caloric intake. So to go from being so afraid of eating fat that I would use those spray cans,
right.
of oil
Yeah.
to like cook anything to suddenly actually eating a tablespoon of mayo was so extreme for me that I needed those macros to have to hit them in order for my body to understand, to get into nutritional ketosis, to understand what feeling fat fueled is like and all those things. And then later on, being able to just do it more and more and more and more intuitively
Right.
Just you get to your goals, you get to your body composition goals, all those things, and you don't need those, as much anymore. Hey guys, just taking a really quick break to talk about the 28-day Ketogenic Girl Challenge. If you're interested in doing a ketogenic diet for yourself, it's a great place to start. I teach you everything about how to follow a keto diet to get yourself into nutritional ketosis, and it includes 28 days of meal plans. It comes with weekly shopping lists, how to interpret results, how to test yourself, a complete guide to getting started on keto. If you've been keto for a while and you're just not getting the results that you want to in terms of your health or fat loss, or you are brand new to keto, the 28-day challenge is a great option because it also comes with my free coaching and support in our members Facebook group, and you can post any questions that you have about the meal plans, about keto, and I am there supporting you. We have an amazing community in our group. I like to call it the happiest place on earth because everybody in there is so excited about following keto, about having found something that really works well for them. And everyone in there is just so kind, caring, generous, and supportive. And it's a really fun place to be and hang out. So if you'd like more info on it, you can find it at ketogenicgirl.com. And it's the 28-day Ketogenic Girl Challenge. And now back to our interview.
So, okay, that kind of leads me into one of the things I wanted to ask you, because you've kind of told us how you got into keto. Most people, I will say, I'll go on a limb and say most people get into keto because of weight loss, because of the weight loss aspect of things. So, but what you've mentioned is this desire to reduce inflammation and to feel better, and your joints were hurting and that kind of thing. So, was it the health and pain-free aspect that you were seeking, or was it the weight loss thing and the health and pain-free thing just sort of went along with it and it was the motivator to stick with it?
Unfortunately for me, the first motivator at the beginning was fat loss. Like I actually, when I was in my later teenage years, I started modeling, and I don't talk about this very much, but I was modeling for like Levi's Jeans and a few other companies. And there was a lot of pressure, to lose weight. And I had, always probably carried around like an extra, anywhere from 10 to 30 pounds, like depending on where I was at. And so I got into dieting and dieting culture and all of that because of that as well. And so that was a big motivator for me. And then it was later in my 20s that I was like, I had gone vegetarian and vegan and I was feeling like really tired all the time. I had developed all of this inflammation from, so it was first fat loss, then wanting to feel good in my body. And then the fact that I mentioned, like I'm an optimizer, maximizer personality. I just want to optimize my health and optimize my experience of life. So it's those three combined that like really drove me to get to keto.
Gotcha. Okay. Now, so you get to the point where you've done research, you've sort of quit your day job, you've started this other thing where it's the Ketogenic Girl. Did it start off for you as just helping people on social media? Did you just write a blog and create articles? When did the podcast come in? Like, how did you build out what you're doing now? Like, what was the process for that?
Yeah. So it's been a few years now. And I was saying before, it really was my hobby. So I was getting up at 4 a.m. just because I wanted to go on Instagram and scroll #keto. And I remember #keto was like next to nothing at the time. I bet if I looked it up now, it would be several million, results, or I'm sure it'll be 5 million, 10 million soon. But at the time, there weren't that many people who were hashtagging it. I just found it so interesting. So I was posting about it and I just had more and more people asking questions. And I figured I could reach more people quicker if I created a website and an ebook, and I could create meal plans based on what had worked for me. Because there's one thing sitting down with each individual person, if you're like an actual nutritionist or something, and saying, okay, well, this is what you in particular need. But then there's people who just want to try keto and they're trying it. It's not working for them. And I'm over here going, well, I tried it this way and this worked for me. So maybe you could try the way I did it and see if it works and make tweaks based on that. But this is based on the 80, 15, 5 ratios. I've worked it all out. I had first 7-day and then 14-day and 28-day programs. And I just started getting so many requests for them that I started doing it like full time. And at the beginning, I just sold the meal plans. But then I realized that people have so many questions about keto that to just sell someone a meal plan is one thing, but to sell someone a meal plan and then also provide a forum where they have a community and can ask questions is really important. So very quickly after I had started that, I developed what I call the 28-day ketogenic girl challenge, which has the 28 days of meal plans. And then it also has a members group where I'm in there 7 days a week and I'm just answering everyone's questions on any question that they have about keto. So obviously a lot of the same questions come up frequently, but I really think it's important to have that support aspect as well. So the community in there can provide support to others who are starting, and I can provide support and, encouragement to people who have figured out that keto is the right thing for them. You really have to determine that first. And I really make sure that everyone consults their doctor first, figures out that, there's no contraindications for them with their medication or health conditions, that keto is something that they can and should do. Their doctor's on board, or, their nutritionist is on board, but they're doing keto and they're just not getting results and they can't figure it out. So I've got this program where everything's figured out for them. They don't even have to track food or whatever, they don't have to test themselves, but they can if they want to. And let's just get started and get going and then, kind of get on the train.
Yeah. And it's interesting. You and I were talking beforehand about when I started keto years and years ago, there were really no resources. There were some books that, you could read to get some ideas about something, but you basically had to piece it all together yourself. And it was really the Wild West of this burgeoning ketogenic thing. But really what I want to drive home to people, and as a form of encouragement more than anything else, is we're nothing special, right? I mean, just regular folks who wanted to learn something and apply it. And we did. And so can you. And also we decided we wanted to help other people too, right? So really what I'm trying to get by saying all of that is, if you're listening to this and you're in a similar boat, if you figure some stuff out, share that information, because there's someone who could benefit from that. We talk about community and it's really, really important. But a community is only as strong as the quietest people are going to be. You know what I mean? So if you figured something out, or you think something works, or you have an idea, it can't hurt to share it, and because look, let's be honest. The worst thing is that you could be wrong, right? I mean, you could be mistaken in some way, but okay, now you've learned something, but at least go out there and talk and share. And, you know what I mean? Everyone's got a voice. So why not go help other people? You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
So yeah, it's really important, I think, that you have a really large following and people look up to you and they consider you half celebrity, half expert, right? And I mean, the truth of the matter is you learned all this stuff by asking hard questions, doing research, all of these things, nothing that someone else can't do, but you're trying to make it easier for someone else so that, kind of learn from my mistakes sort of thing. But at the same time, don't just take it. Don't just be a consumer. Help your fellow people, help your sphere as well, is kind of what I'm saying. Pay it forward, I guess. Mm-hmm. Or I could be completely wrong.
No, that's a really great message. And I think that that's what's so cool about our community. And it's funny because your name Ketovangelist, that's what people become when they do keto and it does work for them and it is the right thing for them. They become lit by this right. fire of, keto, because it's so powerful. We all know it's been used for hundreds of years to cure things that even the most powerful drugs on the market can't do in some cases, like with epileptic cases. And it is so, so powerful. And people love to spread the message once they see that it works for them. And they get caught up in the passion like everyone does, because they're so amazed by the results that they get. They're so amazed by finally having food peace, finally feeling energized and fueled and not being all over the place with their energy and moods and feeling so good. I've never had energy like this. And to me, just not having pain in my body, all these things, it's hard not to talk about it. It's hard not to be excited about it and share about it. And I think it's so cool that people do get so lit by it. And our community is full of amazing, passionate people, because you can't help it once you experience it for yourself, or you see someone really close to you get such a, transformative results in some cases. You just can't help it. You want to spread the word and share it.
Well, right. And there's a lot of factors at play there, especially when you're talking about, you yourself, you were in the dieting, and I'm using air quotes, lifestyle, which many, many, many people are or have been. And it's just another way of self-torture is really all it is. Deprivation followed by self-loathing, because the deprivation is going to, cause you to go off the deep end, the other side, that kind of thing. So it's just this yo-yo thing. But with keto, it's like the satiety and the satisfaction seems to be the thing that is the most overwhelming aspect of it. The results are great, but the results are not at the expense of your mental well-being. You know what I mean? Like you still feel good at the same time as getting results. So I think that's one of the most powerful things. All right. So I wanted to ask you, I'm changing subjects real quick. I have unfair questions now to ask. So be warned. So if you were to identify 1, 2, 3 biggest mistakes that you think people make when it comes to either starting keto or implementing keto and, for themselves, granted, assuming the understanding that individuals, doesn't necessarily apply to individuals, but just in a general sense, based upon your experiences, what would you say are some of the mistakes and that you've run into with people and possible solutions for them?
Yeah, I think some of the ones that I have are probably going to be ones that are heard or that you hear a lot of people bring up because they really seem to affect a lot of people. One of the main ones is not testing yourself for ketosis. And I'm not saying that everyone has to, but if you are doing keto and you're getting great results, then more power to you and you don't need to test. But if you are struggling and you're not testing, then that should be the number one thing that you do because you may or may not actually be in nutritional ketosis. And the only way to really know is to test yourself. And to me, there's no money I've ever spent in a better way than that, $18 I spent on my glucometer, to be able to start understanding how my body reacts and responds to food. And I've learned so much more about it. And it's just the beginning because health tech is going to bring so much more of these incredible things into our lives for us to be able to better understand our bodies. Before testing myself, I didn't understand how my body would spike insulin in response and blood sugar in response to eating too much protein. I didn't know that was a thing. There's so many different things that it'll help you avoid other mistakes as well. So not testing, overdoing protein, which I talk about all the time. And there's a lot of debate in the keto community about the fact that can you overdo protein or not? I have personally seen it for myself. If I eat too much protein, it kicks me out of nutritional ketosis, controlling for carbs. So unless you're someone who's maybe a bodybuilder, extremely active, overdoing protein can keep you out of ketosis. So that is a big thing. And probably the thing that I'm the most fired up about these days really is sweeteners and having them in sweetened drinks throughout the day. And I just did a post about it a couple of days ago and people responded really well to it this time. A lot of times when I posted about it in the past, people have gotten upset because they think that I'm saying that you can't use sweeteners at all. I personally quit sweeteners a year ago this month, but that was just for me personally because they were giving me cravings because I was having a strong cephalic phase insulin response to them. So I was getting a lot of insulin released when I would drink, say like a stevia sweetened drink or, lemonade or coffee or something, which then would send my blood sugar too low. And then I would have cravings to bring the blood sugar back up. So for me, it did that. And then it also meant that my body was not getting a break from insulin in between eating meals. So I wasn't actually fasting between meals. So if you are struggling with a weight loss stall or something, or you're not losing as much as you'd like to be, it could be that you're drinking a lot of sweetened beverages and your body is going to block fat burning because you have insulin constantly being stimulated by just the taste of sweetness in your mouth. So those are kind of the 3 things that I think can make a big, big difference.
Yeah, I want to piggyback on that a little bit too. That, sweeteners, fantastic, and there's camps all over the sides of whether, sweeteners are okay or not. I think it's incontrovertible that not having them is probably better than having them. However, having said that, there are plenty of people who say, I couldn't stay keto if I couldn't have, something sweet. And okay, fine. I mean, I would ask, investigate that a little bit, personal, do a little dive into yourself, to figure out why that is the case. But that being the case, there are worse choices. Yeah, I totally agree. I'm with you 100%.
But the cool thing is that when you go off them completely, like I have, everything starts to taste
sweet, right? Everything is sweet. It doesn't matter what you eat. Yeah. Like black coffee is this is kind of sweet. Yeah. I don't understand. Yeah, it's for sure.
I enjoy the bitterness in black coffee now. When sweeteners, what they actually do is block your bitterness receptors. So I love tasting the bitterness in 100% dark chocolate and coffee. And it sounds really extreme to people, but everything starts to taste wonderful and sweet, and like seafood and shellfish, if you love the taste of sweetness, you're going to enjoy it more than ever.
Yeah.
But I'm not saying you have to go off sweeteners, but if you do, like say you love, stevia sweetened soda or coffee or whatever, just have it at your meals when you are going to be having calories. It's the part that there's no calories coming in, but the body prepares and releases insulin for the anticipation of calories coming in. That causes a problem and causes craving. So you can still have sweeteners like with your meals, with your food, just not, drinking sweetened beverages all throughout the day. Then you're not going to ever really be in intermittent fasting.
Yeah. So I've said it before, there are keto friendly sweeteners. Sure. But the best choice, in my opinion, is to avoid them, not have them at all. And, really, we joke about it, but seriously, it will change how you receive food. Your palate will change. The thing is, you actually start to,
it's the coolest thing.
It really, you will start to taste flavors that were just hidden by sweet before, and if that's something that's important to you or you think is interesting, then it's worth giving it a shot. So one of the things that you were just talking about was the protein sensitivity and mentioning, people who work out a lot. So I wanted to ask you again, this is my section of unfair questions, but I wanted to ask one of the processes that I notice is people, they start keto, they start to see results in their body, they start to feel results inside, and then they start having energy, and then they want to start working out, right? So I wanted to ask you, are you experiencing that, or have you experienced that as well? Or have you always been someone who was active anyway? Or is that something that just kind of skipped you as an individual?
So I was really, really active for most of my teenagers and in my 20s, but it was all driven and motivated by wanting to make up for calories eaten or part of the dieting mindset. And when I started keto at the same time, I started realizing that I wanted to do exercise more just for the other benefits, for the good feeling benefits, but not endorphin good feelings. Those endorphins are usually warning signals by the body that your body thinks that you're in some kind of unsafe situation. Like I used to run on the treadmill for anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour and a half. And my body was like, she's definitely running from something super dangerous.
Right.
So we're going to she's having major stress right now. We're going to put her in survival mode, block all fat burning, put all these stressful chemicals and all the inflammation that I had from that. And it was at that same time that I started stopping doing that. I got rid of my treadmill. I started doing yoga. I started doing exercise that just felt good. And it was because of that, like you were saying, energy that naturally comes. Like today, I had so much energy this morning before having coffee that I just went for a run in my building and did the stairs, from the first floor to the top and down. And not when I would have done that, say in my early 20s, it would have been in that dieting framework. But this was just to run off extra energy because it feels good. And also I know now how much exercise enhancing your body composition through building more muscle tone increases your insulin sensitivity, which is what I want the most at the end of the day is really, really strong metabolic health. So, doing an exercise like that helps me run off some of that energy that I have. And it also enhances my body composition and insulin sensitivity. So I do exercise now really for body composition and health and feeling good. And I always, for a long time, people thought that I was against exercise because I had a lot of slogans like lose weight without any exercise. And people would freak out how could you tell people not to exercise? I'm like, that's not what I'm doing. It's just there's a lot of people that can't exercise because they're physically unable to from a disability or because maybe they're so heavy that they just give up and they lose hope that they could ever change. And so with keto, I was trying to get people to understand that exercise is one of the worst ways to lose weight and lose fat, and that it really should be primarily about your diet, and then exercise should be more about enhancing your body composition. And I've been working with a trainer to release an exercise program because there's very specific exercises that go along with keto that don't stress you out, don't give your body those chemical reactions to stress and make sure that your body knows that it's safe, but there are functional movements that help enhance your body composition.
Yeah. So that idea that you're talking about, like your previous life, the idea that exercise as a form of punishment, right? That should never be the case as far as I'm concerned, right? Exercise should be something that you enjoy and you are doing for the beneficial aspects of it, not because you're, mad at yourself or you're trying to, punish yourself in some way.
It should be a reward.
Yeah,
instead
absolutely.
of a punishment, right?
Absolutely. And I think it's well documented the emotional benefits, aside from any of the physiological and body comp, benefits of it, the emotional benefits of exercise are well documented. And the problem is when you muddy that by going into it from a perspective of, I have to do this because I screwed up, or I can't screw up, so I have to do this. It causes a negative feedback loop as opposed to the positive feedback loop that it should be. Because think about it. If you go back to into the ancient times when you actually had to hunt your own food, exercise meant you were about to get a reward, because you don't go running for the sake of running. You run after something that you're going to go stalk and kill and eat, right? I mean, so it was reserved for survival. It wasn't and it was something that you looked forward to because you enjoyed eating, right? Like you enjoyed staying alive. So it was a situation where, it was a positive sort of feedback loop thing. Okay. So working out is a big deal. And I think it's important that people understand that, again, like you're talking about, there's so much in what you said, people will hear what they want to hear, even though it's not what you're saying. Like when you say lose weight without exercise, somehow they take that to mean you're saying exercise is bad. And that's not what you're saying at all. Right. But again, exercise is not required to lose body fat. You can't outrun a bad diet either. Mm-hmm. There are plenty of bumper sticker slogans, abs are made in the kitchen, not in the gym, all of those things. And it's true. If your nutrition isn't worked out, it doesn't matter how hard you work. There's a reason why like professional football players, like linemen and defensive linemen, they work hard every day. But they don't look like they work hard every day, right? I mean, because their diet is is such that they're not going to get, ripped and shredded and things like that because they don't want to be. They want to be as big as possible. So their diet, conflicts with their workout, that kind of thing. Okay. So last unfair question, or last unfair series of questions. What do you eat now? Like what's a typical day of food for you? And the follow-up question, what is your favorite keto meal right now?
Yeah. My favorite keto meal right now is a keto Cobb salads. Like I've been posting about them a ton because I really think that variety is the key to getting in a lot of nutritional variety, basically. Sure. So I love making keto Cobb salads at home. And I do like a lot of videos on the weekend where I show like this is how I meal prep, like I'll batch prep, cook all the bacon at the same time, hard boil all the eggs at the same time, and, prepare all the salad mix. And I'll make a huge batch of either my Caesar dressing or ranch. And I have it just ready to go during the week. And I make like my own mayo and stuff. So I'll batch prep that. And then during the week, it's really easy to just make keto Cobb salad at home. And Cobb salads are great when you're on the road, you're at a restaurant, and it's a great keto option, but there's going to be a lot of like hidden stuff in there. There could be MSG in the dressing, hidden carbs, like all these things. So I really like just making them at home. And I like the variety and options that it gives me to add, I think one time I even got like a deal on lobster tails or something. So I put some of that on there, like crab, and I'll do like a row of bacon, hard-boiled egg, maybe this week, like goat cheese, or another week, blue cheese, or, change it up. And like, it just gives you a lot of variety in terms of being able to have a little bit of salmon on there, so you've got seafood, you've got some meat, bacon, or even like I made a steak version of it because we made a ton of steak grilling this weekend. So it's just basically like a salad, but it's a Cobb salad because it's just fun to line things up in a row and make them look pretty, and then have like a delicious dressing. And, you just can't go wrong with that. You're getting tons of nutrients. And I like the fact that a lot of people talk about when they go on keto and intermittent fasting, you start to become really picky. And I don't want to say that I'm a food snob, but you become more picky about what you eat. You're like, do I want to eat this like weird airport salad, or would I rather just like fast until I'm home and then eat a delicious keto Cobb salad that I can make myself? So you just become more picky about the way that you eat because you want to maximize and optimize the nutrient value from the meals that you eat. So that's probably my favorite meal right now that I do at home. And we do that during the week, and I'll make that for my husband as well. Daily for me, optimally, I like to do 2 meals a day or 1 meal a day. But if I do 1 meal a day, I make sure to keep the calories up. I really make sure to keep the calories. It's not hard to do on keto because you eat a lot of calorie dense foods, but I always make sure that my calories stay up there. It's hard to get your metabolism up high. It takes work. And so I make sure that, if it's a day where I'm doing intermittent fasting, then that's an intermittent fasting day. If it's a day where I'm doing, like most days, 2 meals a day or 1 meal a day, it's going to be really, really well nourished and it's going to be calorie dense. And sometimes people will post comments on my meals and be like, is that for one person?
Right.
Like,
right.
It is. It's just for me, but it's very nutrient dense. And my metabolic rate is high. Your body doesn't really care about how many calories you eat at the end of the day. If you're doing fasting really well and you're eating to satiety and you're eating really high quality food, you won't really be putting on weight if you're doing it properly that way. And you can be burning fat as well. So I like to do that usually 2 meals a day. And I usually eat around midday to early afternoon. And then I try to close my eating window every day before it gets too late at night. And that's not all the time. Sometimes my husband and I will watch a movie on the weekend and I'll make like my keto hot fudge sundaes and, it's past the eating window or whatever. I try not to be too rigid about things either. And I'm more flowy like that. So like when I'm kind of call it in maintenance mode, like I can have a little bit more protein, a little bit more carb, be a little bit more easy about going out to eat at restaurants or something. And then I'll kind of maybe balance it out with time where we're just eating at home. We're not eating out and I'm doing it a little bit more like by the rules in a way.
Sure. Okay. So variety clearly is a big deal for you. And that kind of makes sense because you like food.
Yeah.
Being a vegetarian for so many years too, I mean, you kind of got in that habit anyway of getting a lot of variety because, there's always new vegetables to try, right? All right. So I wanted to switch tunes or switch tracks for you just real quick. You're coming to Austin in a couple of months to speak at KetoCon. So I wanted to say, first of all, thanks for coming. And we're really looking forward to hearing you. But so the travel from Czech Republic to Austin, do you know how long that flight is?
Yeah, so I'm flying. There's a brand new flight that goes Prague, Philadelphia, Austin. So it's not direct, but it's rarely direct. When I fly back, I'll usually go, through Germany or through like Toronto or something. But I'm a little bit more excited about that flight. It's going to be shorter to do than some of the other ones because it's a new trajectory. So that should be, I'm going to say it's about 10 hours because I just flew to Toronto last week and back and it was about 10 hours. So just for that track. And then there might be some extra like at the airport or between the flights. So it's not too bad.
So 10 hours on a single like plane, like you're basically in a very large beer can is what you are hurtling over the ocean is what you're doing. So do you have a hard time, you just try to sleep or do you have a hard time like staying, like trying to not be bored? Like 10 hours, what do you do?
I absolutely love flying and I've been doing it like yourself, like since I was really young. For me, I love, especially when the flight doesn't have Wi-Fi, it's a time where I get a total break from myself because I have a hard time controlling myself and how much I work. And I work every day of the week and I work because I love it. But it's really hard for me to discipline. It's one of the things I'm working on now is like self-care and like trying to balance things more because I love what I do so much that when I'm on a plane, no one can expect anything from me. I feel like I'm off the hook. Like I can just relax and I love to read. And I usually just listen to a lot of podcasts and a lot of audiobooks on the plane and I journal like for hours. I just write out my goals, what I'm thinking of, notes, and I'll do writing. So I love writing, reading great books are really flow activities for me. And the flight goes by usually pretty fast. So it's nice for me just to be able to get a break from the internet, which I love so much. And I can't imagine not having in my life,
So just out of curiosity for this particular flight, are you going to be working on your presentation at all while you're bringing no pressure.
I am working on my presentation now already because I want to blow everyone's socks off. So I don't know if that's physically possible, but
it actually is. The show Mythbusters has proven it's a rarity, but you can actually knock someone's socks off. So I'm curious, can you talk about what you're going to talk about? Like, what's the topic? Do you know off the top of your head?
Yeah, I'm going to talk about keto hacks and fast keto because I think that's really where I can provide the most value to people, is because I've worked with over 3,000 people on getting them into nutritional ketosis. I've done tons of testing on myself. So I know that there's certain things that you can do to avoid all the mistakes that I made when I was starting out and avoid mistakes that I see happen, over and over again. And, if one keto hack can make all the difference for one person, then I think it's great to be able to share those and share things that will get you into nutritional ketosis faster, might help you overcome a block or obstacle that you just might not be aware of, and really just get healthy the best and fastest possible way. So I love biohacking and the concept of biohacking. So that's why it's about keto hacking.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, I'm looking forward to hearing it as well. That's KetoCon in June 15th through the 17th of this year, 2018 in Austin, Texas. So I'm also looking forward to meeting you when you get here. So super excited about that.
Thank you.
So I know we went a little bit over on time. I appreciate you being patient with me. But if someone wanted to connect with you a little bit more and they haven't already, what's the best place for them to find out more about you or to learn more about you or to see more about you?
Absolutely, Brian. So my most active feed is probably my Instagram, which is at Ketogenic Girl. And I post a ton of stuff on there. I post kind of like mini blogs. I post recipes and things that, I'm eating or recipes that I can share and little like tidbits of, some of these keto hacks and things that I've talked about. If you want to ask me a specific question about my books or the 20-day challenge or anything, the best way to reach me is actually through Facebook, because I don't answer a lot on the Instagram, but I am always on Facebook because I'm providing support to members of the 20-day challenge every day of the week. So if you go on Facebook, the Ketogenic Girl Facebook page, and send me a message there, I will respond. I'm on there all the time. So it's the best way to reach me if you have a question, as opposed to like Instagram or email.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you coming on the show. I know it must be pretty late where you are anyway. So thanks for staying up and hanging out with us. So would you mind sticking around for a few minutes after the outro so I can just chat with you for just a brief second?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, a lot of great information. Thank you, Vanessa, for coming on the show. I'm really glad that you were able to do it. I know you're busy, but thank you for finding the time. I'm really looking forward to seeing you in June.
Thank you so much, Brian. It was such a pleasure being here with all you guys.
All right. We'll talk to you later.
Hey guys, thank you so much for tuning in today. I hope that you enjoyed my conversation with Brian. I had such a great time chatting with him. I hope to see many of you at KetoCon in a few weeks coming up in Austin. It's going to be such a fun event full of keto speakers, knowledge, information, fun events, and I am so excited to be there and see many of you guys there. So be sure to check out KetoCon. If you are looking for a way to get started on keto, be sure to check out the 28-day Ketogenic Girl Challenge. It's all at ketogenicgirl.com. And if you have any questions about it, send me a message on Facebook. You can look up the Ketogenic Girl on Facebook. I'm always there answering messages and super responsive. It's the best way to reach me if you have any questions about the program, meal plans, and challenge. And it comes with my free support and coaching, which I really believe is so important when you're starting a new lifestyle, especially one as different as keto is to the standard North American diet or Western European diet. So be sure to check out the 28-day challenge at ketogenicgirl.com. And I would say have a fat-filled week, but I'll be back in the next couple of days with my next episode. I have a very fascinating guest on, and we are specifically talking about some very interesting things with regards to protein intake, some very surprising findings that this particular professor had and presented about at Low Carb Breckenridge recently. So check out that episode when it comes out in a couple of days and have a fat-filled rest of your day.